Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about mentorship in the birth world. And instead of having a long intro, just wanted to get right into it and talk about my journey to becoming a doula. When I first was new to the doula world, I didn't feel comfortable supporting clients after my training that I received with Dona. Within the process to get certified, you need to read a list of books, fill out a lot of paperwork, but also get positive feedback from a provider, a nurse, and a client, and also support 3 clients. I didn't feel like I was well equipped from the training. I wanted more knowledge and more guidance to be able to support folks. So because of that, I went out to look for another organization that was more dedicated to supporting underserved communities and people that look like me. And they were very heavy in activism. This organization is called Ancient Songs Doula Services. Shout out to them. Naturally, I'm a proactive person, a go-getter, if you will. So I turned to the internet and was told to join a Facebook group that was based in New York. And it was a Facebook group that was dedicated to the birth world, but specifically had a lot of doulas in the group. In the group, I put out there that I was seeking mentorship, and I got a few responses. So the few that did respond to me were willing to support, but wanted compensation. At that time, I didn't have clients and honestly couldn't afford it after investing in multiple trainings and having to pay for rent, bills, and all of life in New York City. But for me, I was looking for my tribe in this space. I was looking for guidance from an elder. Lucky enough, I connected with a coworker during my time as a flight attendant who also trained to be a doula. And she was able to connect me with another doula that she thought would be able to help me on my journey. And she was right. This doula welcomed me with open arms and was able to set up some time for us to meet in person. And from our meeting, she pointed me to a mentorship program that significantly helped me in my doula journey. And the mentorship program offered scholarships to doulas that were part of the BIPOC community. I was able to receive a scholarship, and then from there was able to meet some amazing doulas, and I felt that I had found my community, I had found my birth work tribe. This is just one story, my story, and everyone's journey and story is going to be different, especially when it comes to birth and birth work. I've had many different mentors in my journey as a doula, and I am grateful for each and every one of them. But there's one that holds a very special place in my heart because she's not only a mentor, she has literally become like family, an auntie in my head. Her name is Annette Perel of Childbirth NYC. She is a mother, a daughter, a sister, a podcaster, a creative, a fashionista, a mentor, a doula of 20 years. Let me say that again. 20 years, and a dear friend. So within my story, mentorship was an integral part of my journey. And so I've invited Annette on my channel today to talk about mentorship and why it's important to have a mentor in this work.
Thank you, Oge, for inviting me to your channel today. I'm really excited to be speaking about doulas and mentorship. It's a very important topic, and let's jump into it.
Okay. So why is it important to have a mentor in this work?
This work is so heavy, and I think everyone gets into this work and they start thinking about how, they just want to be there and support women and how beautiful it is. But you need guidance through this process because it's so heavy and because of the things that you're seeing aren't normal in hindsight. It's not natural to you as a doula for the first time to understand what happens when someone is having an episiotomy, or that split decision when people get called into the room, and that's traumatic. So to have someone to either speak with about it or just to process, I think it's a necessity for a doula.
So in all of that, which makes sense, did you have a mentor?
I did not have a mentor. I went about this the hard way. Actually, I took my training through Dona, And when I finished my training, we had to get free births, because at the time it was like you had to get free births. And I had joined up with 3 other doulas, and we were trying to get free births. But I looked into mentorship through DONA. They had a mentor for the region, and I emailed this person and never heard back.
Yeah, I could understand that, because even though I mentioned when I reached out to doulas on the Facebook group, it was maybe like 2 or 3 people that reached out, and then I was even more proactive and emailed more, and I didn't get responses. So I completely understand that. So throughout your journey, right, as a doula, years have passed, you've gained so much experience, and now people are looking to you to being a mentor.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
So I had started my mentor journey with this collective, and I got inboarded, so to speak, by my doula partner at the time. I had started my doula career, and it was me and another doula. And we both interviewed together, and one of us would go to the birth. We both did the prenatals together. And so she found this organization in Brooklyn and invited me. At first, I was a little apprehensive about being a mentor, because I'm still always learning. I'm a forever student in that respect, but also just to be able to say like, I have knowledge was kind of, felt a little cheesy, kind of be like, let me show you, take you under my wing, kind of, so to speak. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, I want to be the type of mentor that I would have wanted and needed. And so I was really excited to have some mentees to begin this process. And their structure was a little bit different. So it was a tiered structure. So they started at tier 1, and then you had to help them move up through the ranks to eventually be what was considered then, I believe it was only 4 tiers at the time, and mentors were at the top of the tier. So just helping them through that process, and also guiding them through the process of like getting your first birth and what does that look like. It was really exciting. I can say this one little story. I had a mentee one time. She was like, I'm gonna call you after my interview. And I was just like, okay. And she called me 3 hours later, and she was like, so I took notes. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how long was this interview? And she was like, it was 2 hours. And I was like, no ma'am. I was like, I'm sorry, that's not an interview. You have to introduce yourself, understand what they want or what they're looking for, and see if you're a match. It shouldn't be 2 hours of you taking notes as to what they want about their birth. So that was really like, we laughed about that. And I was like, no more than 45 minutes should be an interview, or an hour, if you're having a good time or something like that. But yeah, that was being able to help them concise that, because if you think about it, one thing that we did pre-pandemic was meet in person, and you have to take into consideration travel time. And a lot of times we were traveling to people's homes, not a restaurant. But even still, travel time there and back, away from your family. And she was a young mom. She had a young son at the time.
So just hearing that and seeing how you were able to put yourself in that doula's shoes and really connect with her. And remember when you were a newer doula, does that mean that anyone can be a mentor? If they've gone through the amount of time and gained the knowledge and experience that you've gained?
I believe that there is someone for everyone. I do believe that, but do I believe that just because you can and you have the experience, you should? It's like actors, right? You're always learning a craft, but they don't always want to teach. It's that same thing. Mm-hmm. And some people can't teach. Some people aren't good teachers. Right. I think you have to be self-aware because people would say, oh, I'll be your mentor, and then it's not a good fit.
From a newer doula standpoint, I reached out to this woman. I feel like I was a good mentee, but I reached out to her late at night, random times, and she was always available. So for me, I don't think everyone can be a mentor, because people love their peace, their sleep.
Yeah, especially being on call, right? I think part of it for me was, I know in those moments when I was in the room as a new doula and I was sitting there going, what does that mean? And not having anyone to process it with in that moment made me go, that's scary because there could be things that's going on. I mean, I had my doula partner, but at times it was challenging because I didn't want to text her late at night and midnight or 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was really hard. So I always felt like for my mentees, as long as it's birth related, text me, I'm on call. I can fall back to sleep. I'm a doula. I know how to fall back to sleep, especially if it's something easy. Although one time I had a mentee, not okay.
Okay, I was like,
not okay.
Don't be
not
calling
okay.
me
No,
out.
not okay. I had a mentee text me in the middle of the night to ask me where the hospital was. And I was just like, ma'am, that is something you should have known before. And it is also something that's useful for Google, not your mentor at 12:45 at night.
So then my next question, is there such thing as a good or bad mentee from a mentor standpoint?
I do believe that there is, yes. I do believe that there, it's just like clients, like we're doulas, right? And we can work with anyone because that's our training. We can work in any situation with anyone, but should we? I think that's the question we have to ask. Should we? And a lot of times what makes a good mentee is someone that you feel can listen to you, that values the advice, that gives you feedback, that's able to communicate with you, and also that's compassionate about this work. Right? Because we're working doulas. We live in New York City. My first doula name was, with my doula partner, was Love My Doula. Because that's what we heard all the time. I love my doula. I love my doula. But not everyone's gonna love you. And in those times when you have conflicts with clients, you need to be able to listen and hear your mentor when they're giving you advice and counsel, because this work is so intimate and so personal. There are a lot of emotions that are involved in it. And at times not everyone's gonna love you. And you're not always gonna have that experience with a client where you actually feel like they're listening to you and you like them, so there can be contention. So I think that as long as you're communicating, it's a relationship. If I had a mentee who I felt that wasn't hearing me or couldn't take my advice and was having the same issues and problems, then I would say this relationship is not working, because there's something you have to learn or grow or mature and stop doing in order to be successful. And then also too, this is my reputation as well, right? I've been doing this for a long time. I think there's value when you tell a client that I have a mentor, and then they look up that mentor and see there's this level of security of knowing that your new doula has a mentor who she can ask questions about, who's been doing this for a long time. So I think that relationship, it has to be give and take.
Right. Yeah. And so for clients to hear that for me, for example, I had a mentor, now they're like, okay, I have Oge's experience, but I also have the experience of someone that's been doing this work for as long as she has. Yeah. Also, just hearing your response, the person has to be teachable.
Yes.
Right? And if they're not teachable,
then it's not
then
a good
it's just
fit. It's not a good fit.
Why even seek mentorship if you're not looking to learn and humble yourself? So I told you all about my story and my journey, and I have to say that not everyone has the same personality that I do. Not everyone is proactive. And so one question I'd like for you to share with us is, how do you go about finding or seeking a mentor?
I love to tell people to invite me to coffee. I love coffee. I love chai tea. I love matcha. I love to meet people and speak to them and hear their stories and tell them a little bit about mine. And I think that that's what you have to do, is just invite people out, get to know people, whether, if you can't pay for a session of mentoring, which some people charge for interviews and things like that, invite them to lunch, invite them to tea, tell them, listen, let them know your story. I don't have that much money, but I can go to tea. Or I get a lot of grad students who want to interview me for their projects, and they're like, I don't have money, but I have a $10 Starbucks card, something like that. I do believe that there should be an exchange in that process, because it is time.
And so I guess for new doulas that are watching, finding a doula that has had this experience and taking them out can be challenging too, and just seeing if they're the right fit to be a mentor. So for me, I kind of had a cheat code, if you will, by going into a mentorship program where they was set up that had a collective of mentors that they already had in place that they knew would be right for newer doulas. So what I would say is maybe look for mentorship programs that are already set up, but if not, again, taking other doulas that you have seen and been following their work, or hold them in a high regard and just see what their response is, and then go from there. But you know, reaching out is probably the best way of connecting with people.
And I often have to say, if you reach out to someone via email, you know, give them the grace of a week before you reach back out to them. If you reach out to them and leave them a voicemail, the same, give them about a week or so to get back to you. I don't like to wait that long to get back to people unless I'm out of birth, but, and you can be a little persistent because sometimes we forget, right? We star the email and a week has gone by and we get so much correspondence from our clients, from potential clients, that can fall to the wayside. So it's not that we're neglecting you, it's just that we get a little busy. So send another, hey, hello, you know, not the, I wrote you last week, you didn't respond. It's like, you know, just a little sympathy and compassion.
Okay. So do you mentor just anyone? I know we talked about are there good or bad mentees, but what is kind of a red flag, or is it just anyone that comes and reaches out to you?
No, it's not anyone. I kind of vet people as well. I sit down and have a conversation and hear. I want to know why you got into this work. I want to know why you want to do this work. I want to know that you have an understanding of that this is work. I want you to have an understanding that it's an education, right? You have to constantly educate yourself. In birth, things change really slowly. So I don't want you to think that you have to take 50 trainings all at once. Like, I want you to process and sit with the training that you've taken. If you took a training, how was that for you? How can you incorporate that, what you've learned, into your business and how moving forward? Because you have people who love certifications and they'll take a certification course, they'll take all these courses, but they're not learning anything from it and they're not incorporating it. I want to see that you understand that this is work and that you're also going to do the work. And you can get a good sense. It's like speed dating. You know, you get a good sense of this is not a match.
Right.
You know, I'll give you an example. I had a mentee one time that was assigned to me, and I sat in the meeting and asked the questions, and she answered the questions. That was it. And when I asked her, like, what did she want to know about me? She was just like, nothing. And so it wasn't a match. You know, and I kept trying to like encourage her to speak to me. I didn't know if she was shy or what the issue was. And it was like pulling teeth. And it was really hard. It was so uncomfortable. And she hadn't really she took a certification, but she hadn't really done any births or knew about how to get births. So I tried to like encourage her. I was like, okay, here are 3 things you can do to get births, and I'll check on you this week to make sure that you've done them. And she never got back to me. You know, and then she chose another mentor, which was fine because she felt it too. Like I wasn't for her, and that's totally fine as well.
Finding mentors is literally like speed dating.
It really,
you're going to be in constant communication with that person. Yes. So yes. So I guess you kind of touched upon it a little bit throughout your answers, but what would you say is your approach as a mentor? Are you doing the same things to each mentee, like giving them the same information, or kind of working off of them? What would you say is your approach?
I think my approach initially, we talk about this work and what they want out of this work. Like everyone that becomes a doula is not going to be a doula for 20 years. It might be an entryway into birth work to see if they want to go into nursing or midwifery. So that's an understanding. And I also want to get a good sense that you're going to do the work and not burn out, because there is a high burnout with this work, especially if you're doing 4 births a month. That's a lot, especially as for someone new. So just getting an understanding of what they want. And yes, there's an initial part where I am doing the same things, like this is what your contract should look like or include, and this is how you returned an an email to someone what it should include. So I give them kind of like a package that has a standard letter that they can use as a response. I share my contract so that they can see the wording, and they're free to like use the same contract if you want to, or switch it up. I give out forms that I often give out at my prenatals. I talk about how to conduct a prenatal, what should be included in a prenatal, also how to conduct an interview, because interviewing, especially when it comes to this, is not usual. Like, it's not a regular job interview. This is way more personal, and you have to connect with people. So we talk about that. And then after you've incorporated it, if something's not working, then we kind of tweak it from there. And then once you start doing the work, I check in more frequently to see how things are going, or check in after births to see how you're processing it, and just to give my feedback. Because one time, and this wasn't a mentee, this was a doula that I knew who had a birth experience that was very traumatic. And she went on a Facebook group and wrote about the experience, in the way that she shared a lot of information about this client, their family, about what happened at their birth, and her experience. And her experience is definitely valid, but this was something that she should have processed with someone, not on a Facebook internet forum that's just open for everyone. And she named the midwife that she had the incident with. I heard about it from another doula who was talking about this thing had happened, and she sent me what she wrote. And I was like, I felt so bad, because it was traumatic to see. And also what she wrote about, she had no understanding of the process of why she was seeing what she was seeing. So if you've never seen something like that, you're gonna be like, oh my God, this is awful. Right. So there was no context. And my first instinct was to call her and be like, hey, are you okay?
And this wasn't a mentee.
This was not a mentee. Doula. This was someone that I knew who became a doula, and this was like maybe her second birth. And she was traumatized and not understanding the process of how, when things like this happen, like who to reach out to, and also just not sharing personal information, right? And in your trauma, just to grieve, you're just uploading all of this information and not even realizing that this is someone's life and their story that you're telling. And it's not to be shared with everyone. It's,
Right. We have to remember as doulas that we are not medical professionals, so we're not linked to HIPAA, but we still have access to sensitive information. So respecting that and honoring that is utmost important.
Yeah, another story in that same respect, I had a doula who told this story about a birth that she went to on a public forum. And from that, this client of mine who was on that forum, just because anybody can join the forum, you don't have to be a doula to be on a doula forum, realized that conversation, that birth and everything that happened was her friend's. And she hadn't heard that from her friend. And so she felt, one, that was a violation, and it was. So, you might think that by saying, hey, November 28th, at 10 o'clock, this baby boy was born, that's vague enough. But people figure things out,
I mean, I've done that before, and then now I've learned to ask permission from the parents.
As long as you have permission, it's fine. I mean, the internet was something that was new when I started as a doula. I used to write baby born all the time, or going to a birth, or I'm at this hospital. And then I realized, and I've been speaking with other of my doula colleagues about, just like, you think it's innocent enough, but it's not. You're giving out information, and this work isn't about me. And I'm making it about me if I'm gone to my 700th birth, without asking permission, or two, sometimes just understanding that it's not an announcement. It's not clout, It's about this work, and you're doing this work, and a lot of this work is done in silence. If I'm like, I'm at my 1,000 whatever birth, it's just like, what is this doula doing? Why is she making it about her, or posting pictures of baby number X? Even with permission, it's just too much, in my opinion.
No shade, just
or shade, no shade. No. The thing about that is that we need to start calling people in and having these conversations. And sometimes people can't hear that, and you might not be able to hear it now, but maybe in a few years it might resonate, you know? Not trying to be nasty or, you know, I'm better than. It's like, you know, things to really think about this work to make it more personal. This is a very intimate space that you've been invited into, and to share it publicly in that way is a lot.
That's true. One thing for Annette being my mentor and speaking on her approach, one thing that was like, this is a learning opportunity for me, because I would call her, especially later on in my mentorship journey with her, call her about clients, about things that I know the answer to, but in the moment, completely forgot. So she would, instead of giving me the answer, what do you think? Trust your instincts, you know this, okay? It's kind of like having that support, knowing that you've been doing this work for how long you've been doing it, and you have someone that has your back. So it would frustrate me, but then I would like, okay, let me breathe, let me remember what it is that I know, and then go and support my client. But I was like wanting the easy way out. Annette, what's happening here? Yeah. So-and-so, this is this. What do you think, okay? And it was like, no, tell me.
Tell me. You know, the thing about birth is that it's exhausting. It's really, there's a lot of time where you're probably not doing anything, but it's tiresome. If you're sitting around for hours on end, not doing something, and what I call not doing something is like you're holding space. You're on, you're alert, you know, and it can be hour 15 and your brain is just like, I don't know. I'm freaking out. I don't know this. It's because you're tired. It's because, you know, you haven't drank, you haven't slept a full stretch. You might sleep 30 minutes at a time, you know, or maybe an hour at most before your client needs you again if you're at their place. So sometimes you get a little frazzled, and it's like you just need somebody to kind of like give you that spark to be like, you know what to do. You know, to reignite that spirit of like, I got this. You know, I'm here if you really need something, but you got this. And that's what you need to hear sometimes, no matter how frustrated.
Do you think that there's a point where someone doesn't need a mentor anymore? Like, would you have a mentor if you could right now, or did you later?
What I have is a community. I think you do graduate from mentorship, but you have a community. I have a community of doulas who have been doing this work for as long as I've been doing this work. And we meet once a month and we talk about things.
So as I mentioned, she was my mentor from the mentorship program. And so our relationship developed. And even though I can reach out to her for basically anything within the birth world and outside of the birth world, she is now a friend. But within the mentorship program, and even a little bit after it, she was officially my mentor. And so I wanted her to share her experience with me as her mentee, so you all as newer doulas can learn from my mistakes and from my successes.
There were no mistakes. I mean, my first interaction with Oge, or first memory of Oge, the way the mentor program was set up, at times we were in this large room together, you know, everyone sitting all around the room, and I was sitting off to, like, let's say the right, and Oge was sitting on the floor, and someone was at the front talking, and I just remember feeling like, I like this energy that I'm getting. She's like strong, sure, you know, reserved in a way. It was just like not talking just to talk. Whenever she spoke, it was like well thought out, like she had something to give to the conversation, not always just taking, and was very reflective. So that was like my first. I was just like, oh, okay, but you weren't my mentee.
No, not at first.
So the other doula who was your mentor, I remember the other doula I was sitting with was just like, I want her. And I was just like, okay, well, you know, you're gonna get who you're gonna get, right, and leave it at that. And also the good thing about the mentor program is that with any mentor program, you should be able to change mentors if your mentor isn't working for you. And so I didn't sweat it, and Oge wasn't my mentee, and then she reached out to me. And the thing is, I'm kind of bad when it comes to saying no to people when it's mentoring, especially if I feel a connection. I'm always like, sure. I was mentoring people who weren't my mentees officially, and by officially I mean I wasn't paid to mentor them, but we had a connection and I felt like, yeah, just ask me questions. And that was kind of Oge. Before she officially changed over, she asked me a few questions, and I don't remember the first email.
I honestly don't remember.
I don't
All
remember.
I know is that, so I went through, I think 3 no, maybe just 2. I was just trying to get knowledge from everybody. So when I saw her, and I was like, oh, she's stylish. And for me, I mean, I'm a person of style, and I know that has nothing to do with birth work, but it's how you present yourself. And that really spoke to me. And the mentor I had before, I loved her. I mean, she was great. And I just felt like I wanted to connect with other doulas and other mentors. And so after my, experience with her, I was like, I'm going to try and reach out to Annette and see if she could be my mentor. And I didn't know that it would kind of bloom and transform into what it is now. I really did not anticipate that, and it was interesting because the mentorship, they would it's kind of like speed dating, but not.
Yeah.
It was strange because they would put a description of each mentor, and then you could put in who you wanted, and then you wouldn't find out until like the revealing. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the specific time of how we communicated, but I know that when I did reach out to her, she was like, oh, we can go get coffee, get some tea, or meet for lunch. Like, it was really open and just welcoming.
Yeah.
That's the one word I could put.
And I feel that, because when you're in an environment to be able to see other people have conversations and what they contribute, you're just like, oh, okay, there's a seriousness that needs to be had about this work that not everyone has. And I think that's what struck me about Oge, because it wasn't just about, I'm a doula and I'm so excited to do this work. It was, I really want to make an impact. I don't want to do anything wrong. And by wrong, I mean not affect someone's birth experience because I was not being conscious about culturally what they were experiencing. And that really spoke to me. I would say that most doulas don't get to that until like year 4, where they're like, oh wait, this work is intimate and I'm holding space, and how I am in that space can affect everything. I think by nature, for example, I'm a very calm person. So what you'll get from me as a doula is you'll feel that. Like, I don't get frazzled. My clients won't ever describe like the doula walked in and she freaked out. And then, even in situations that are stressful. And I felt that about Oge too, that she would be really thoughtful and pensive about the situation. And that's also something as a doula's strength, to be able to walk into a room and read the room before you interject yourself. And that's a skill that comes after a while. And I think Oge had that already, because she wasn't just like, I'm walking into the room and I'm the doula. It's like, I'm walking into the room and what's going on? How are you feeling? So it was like, it was really understanding everyone's dynamic in that room, and then how can I help? And that's something that stood out to me. And in talking more with Oge, she was also very good at connecting a lot of dots, in the sense of like, oh, you know what we should do? We need to get together. And she got us together in a group with a whole bunch of other doulas who were some of were my mentees, some were not. And, keeping us in contact, keeping us having communications. And that was also helpful, being able to be in a group setting and to, at one time, even like group chats and things like that, keeping us all abreast as what's happening. I think that this work is really taxing, and Oge did a really good job of making sure that she was okay a lot of times, like, it wasn't like, I'm gonna go run to my next birth. It was like, that was hard, and I need to process this, and my next birth might be happening really soon, so let's work on getting this stuff processed before the next one comes up. Where anyone else would be like, shut down, I gotta go do this thing and I'll think about me later. And then also just being honest with like, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, and realizing that we have to pour back into ourselves, and that's okay. and figuring out what that looks like. Because sometimes it might look like I'm gonna lay on this sofa for the next 5 days and nobody call me. Right? And understanding that there's restoration in rest, and also just getting her clients also to realize that as well. I remember you had a client one time that asked you something after the birth, after the postpartum visit, and was still giving an understanding of like, let's find resources. What can we do to get this person more help? And that's also something that I do with my clients. I tell them postpartum after our last visit that they can reach back out to me a year out. If they have a question, text me. And not everyone does that. I know people think, yes, we have to have boundaries as doulas, and that's important, but also knowing that your clients aren't going to text you at all hours of the night once they've delivered their babies. Sometimes they do because they're up and they're like, let me just get this text out before I forget. But outside of that, just being able to be available and still mentoring, not still doulaing the client was something that I was like, yeah, she's really good at this work. And then just finding other ways, like understanding that, when you were into meditation, and inviting me into that to see that process and how that worked and how that all fits together and ties into birth. Right. So it's not just thinking I'm only going to do doula work and that's the only way I can do this work, as opposed to like, okay, the meditation can tie in because it can help with this, and not just your clients. It helps you, right, to be more centered, or understanding that our health can be really affected by being on call, your sleep being disrupted several times, and our diets sometimes can be really awful because we're up and trying to stay up at like 2, 3, 5 o'clock in the morning. We might have gotten there at 9, and sometimes eating, and just understanding like, okay, I need to reset my body because all of this. I think Oge was really good at that. I wasn't good at that for years. And just us being able to speak about anything regarding birth, and she still had more questions. That was the one thing. It wasn't like, okay, you gave me what I need to know and that was it. It was like, okay, but what about? And how if I do this? So it was like one thing always led to something else for her. And that led me to know that she's really taking in this work.
I think because I was able to get the mentorship early on, it was able to set me up for success in my doula journey. Because now when I had reached out to her recently, I guess within the pandemic, that I was also going to be mentoring other doulas, she was like, that makes sense. Having her from kind of an early stage in my doula career, and having that kind of the focus on what to focus on and pay attention to, and kind of like a sensei, like a guru, having someone just have you focus on what's important within the work and learning from their mistakes too, was able to then kind of catapult me in my knowledge and gaining and where I would go and what I would pull from, and the mistakes or the triumphs that happen during supporting clients. And so when we were talking earlier about if any doula can be a mentor, or if mentors can also have mentors. So me mentoring other doulas, I still have her as a mentor, and grant she's been doing this work way longer than most of the doulas that I know. So that was something that the reason why I'm doing this video is to really press on the idea of finding that tribe and finding mentorship. So because of her, I am really more involved in supporting other newer doulas, because I was a deer caught in headlights, honestly, in the beginning, and seeing like, wait, why don't we have mentorship tied to these trainings? Didn't make sense to me.
I think for me too, one of the things that struck me that what you just said was also that you can't be a doula and believe in this work and not believe in supporting other doulas. For me, I want to see us all succeed. I want as many doulas as we can get doing this work for as long as they can do this work. And if that means that I mentor you for a year, I mentor you for a month, and you feel that you're going to be successful because of that, then that's what I want. I'm not one of these people who feel like, well, you're doing better than me, or that there's life knowledge, right? It's not just doula work that you bring to this work. It's your past experiences and your knowledge of what you had, the life that you had beforehand, that you bring into this work, as well. And that all ties in together. And I feel that when it comes to mentoring, you just want to help other people get to the place where where you're at and be like, see, this is great, and do it without burning out, because this work is really hard. And when we say, I remember a Facebook group we met in person, and there were hardly anyone who would show up at these meetings. And so we were in a group, and one past doula trainer came, and she's like, after birth, you have to do whatever it is to help your body get back to itself, to release all of this energy. And I remember she was like, masturbate, meditate, whatever it is. And the thought of that self-expression of it was just like, yes, that's a release. We have to let go of all of this that we take on, because if you do this work without any kind of release, that's the quickest way to burn out. And not having someone tell you that. Because some people are like, I'm looking for this new path, and I want to do this new job, and I'm going to take on all these clients, and then you're a doula for only 3 months. And that's not what we need.
It's not.